So, Eamon, you were there for day 7 of the trial of Richard Satchwell for the murder of his wife, Tina. And we heard the day started off, I suppose, with detailing or playing the rest of the video of his interview with Gardai. But it kind of did reach a dramatic moment as that video interview is played, when guards tell Richard Satchwell that the remains of his wife have been found.
Yeah, I suppose, to go back to kind of yesterday's evidence finished with him giving this taped interview. So that was being played to the jury, and there was still about 40 minutes of that left to play today. And there was actually in a couple of sections. So you had kind of what he was arrested on the 10th of October in 2023, and the search team had kind of started their preliminary work at that stage, and he was still in custody in Cove Garda Station. So they recap, or the Garda interviewer, Dave Noonan, who's the specialist interviewer who did the enhanced cognitive interview that we heard about earlier in the week. He's back putting questions to him, and he's recapping the story again. And this is the story we've heard a number of times about going to Dungarvan, to the Aldi, coming back. She's not there. The keys are on the floor. The phone's and he's going through again and in a lot of detail. And then it more or less it ends that night. He stays in custody. You hear that on the video, the custody sergeant comes in and says, "Your time's been extended, by superintendent. You understand?" So he's held overnight, and then the next morning,
because typically they let you take 8 to 10 hours for sleep, and then they bring you back.
Yeah,
and they literally sort of press.
Yeah, you often hear it being said, like, the clock is ticking, in terms of, but there is time now allowed for sleep and meals and all that, and it's stopped. And there was some interesting kind of personal.
It goes through details about kind of the relationship, and what was going on, I suppose, at the point at which Tina ultimately died.
Yeah, and if you consider now, this is 6.5 years since his wife has gone missing, and he's given all these media interviews. He did the cognitive interview in 2021. So we're now in October 23. And the interviewer is asking him at one point, like, he's saying, like, your wife is gone, in the day after, like you said, what was going through your head? And he replies, like, well, like, what the fuck is going on? He says, like, in the interview, that's what he says he was thinking, like, and then referring to Tina, he goes, "Where are you? Why would you do this to me? Why won't you let me know where you are?" And he said, like, "I've said this before, if anyone tried to attack her, they'd probably come off worse." And he says all sorts of things were going through my head. He said not just one specific thing, and he was wondering, was she crying over walking away from a 30-year relationship? So he's still he's talking about, I suppose, at the time, he's maintaining that his wife has gone missing and that he thinks she's still out there, and and he's still talking about this while he's now been arrested for murder.
Yeah, because he's obviously had been arrested. This is 2023, the 10th of October, and is that the first time he's been arrested in connection with Tina's murder?
It's the first time he's been arrested in any part of the investigation, whether it's the missing persons or the original search warrant in 2017 was to do with assault causing harm, but this time the search warrant is to do with murder. Yeah, and the concerns about the structural changes to the house, which were in the photographs taken in 2017. But the new detective inspector who took over, Anne-Marie Toomey, she came to this conclusion that she had never left the house, and that there was reasonable grounds to arrest him at this stage. She actually came to that conclusion in August 23. Yeah. And in August 22, and it's September 23 before they get the new warrant to go in for the second search, and then the warrant is executed on the 10th, and we're now kind of at the 11th of October, where he's in the morning of that day, he's in custody again, and again he's going over some of the relationship kind of history, saying that her personality changed after her brother died by suicide in 2017. And he said, her personality changed, and that, they were never sexual again. Not that they were ever particularly sexual, he says. And he says they were the two big changes. Like, he said there were other smaller things, but that was the main, they were the main changes. And he was like he was saying, like, but that was always the way it was with them, that she didn't want to have kids. And he was asked, like, how many kids did you like? And he said, well, 2, one of each, and that kind of thing, And he again, like, he talked about, how he was just captivated by her. And he talks about, so many things that attracted her to him, like her confidence, the way she looked and the way she walked. And all this time, and it's the state's case that he's saying all this while the body of his wife is in the sitting room, where in the grave that they say he dug after she died sometime on either the 9th or the 20th of March in 2017.
Yeah, because of course he's on trial for murder. He has denied that murder. But he has described how Tina died during a confrontation in the home. So while he's being interviewed by the Gardaí, they're also executing this search warrant, and they at some point ask him about the area under the stairs, and even show him photographs, I think, because it's going on kind of in live time, I suppose.
Yeah, but yes, it is. And it's the next morning, I suppose, we're seeing a different approach from the guards. Instead of asking him what happened, they're actually now starting to put stuff to him. So, but before they show him the photographs, the live photographs from his house, where the search team, I think it's the National Forensics group are doing their work, and they're sending back pictures from the scene to their colleagues in Cove Station, where Satchwell is being questioned at the time. But before they even get to that, he said, look, he's been told, look, you're sitting here for the offence of murder. We've spoken to people that you've spoken to, and we've had experts examine all those devices. We've CCTV has been acquired. He says, do you understand that you're the one who's sitting here for murder, and that you've painted a picture over on this wall? Yeah. And on this wall, we have evidence, and we've gone through some of this, and they don't match. Yeah. And that's the way it's put to him. Very, very visual kind of imagery, in a sense that, and what he said, look, I want to give you an opportunity to explain this, and they need to be explained by you. And he's asked several times, do you understand the questions? And yes, he is, and all the rest of it. And they go all through that, and he said, look. And they get into the whole kind of the geospatial data that's been downloaded from his phone when they got access to his Google account. And they go through some of these movements on the 19th of March. This is the day before, when they're still they've gone to a car boot sale. And that he said, look, do you understand this? And he goes, yes, and he does. And he says, everything matches up. Everything is okay there. And the next day, you say you went, to Dungarvan, and then you went to Aldi, and that's all okay. It's all shown there. Your journey home as well from the car boot sale the day before, all of that is there, and and you accept that's correct? And he says, yes, that you accept that's correct, And then they actually say, but in relation to the people who you have mentioned, that you have put out there in the public, the guard is referring to his interviews with the media, and he says, like, for instance, the conversation you had, you mentioned about your doctor, Paddy Burke. The doctor had said to him that he was right to leave it for 4 days. He said, we've gone to him, and he doesn't corroborate your evidence. He said, that's not true. Your version of events isn't true. And he asked him, are you calling him a liar? And he goes, no, like, he's mistaken. He talks a lot. He said, look, if there was a recording device in his office, that would have been picked up, him saying that. And he says, now remember, this is a murder investigation. He said, I think it's in your interest to answer these questions. And he says another gentleman that he had referred to, John Cohan, who would have been, I suppose, an old neighbour of Tina from Fermoy, that they would meet at car boot sales. And he had again in media interviews said that John Cohan had told him a week after Tina had left, that Tina had told John that she loved Richard and that she'd never do anything to hurt him. And he would say in these interviews that this was, I think, her way of saying, I'm okay, everything's going to be fine. And the guards puts to him, he said, John Cohan said he didn't say that. Is he mistaken also? Yeah. And he said, look, he says, they're not liars. He says, these people aren't liars. This is what they did say, but they're mistaken. Yeah. And again, then they hit him up with, they ask him about, like, you remember Tina's best friend, Angela? And he'd already, earlier in this kind of detention time, he was asked to describe, in terms of, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being best friends, like, where was Angela and Tina? And he says 10 out of 10 was how he described it. And she has made a statement to the guards that that's not the case. And he said, I considered Angela to be her best friend for years. You know, they didn't have her phone number. It was one of the things he said, but they always knew where to find her. And he said, look, that's my opinion. I can only go off on what Tina said to me. And it's put to him, that's 3 things that you've been talking about for a long time.
Yeah.
And it doesn't tally with the evidence that the Gardaí have now putting forward, and what is, I presume, is going to be put before the jury at some point. So, but it has been put before the jury from the Guard in the form of this interview that the jury. This one, there were some of it was we saw in video, and then there was another section that was read out.
Yeah,
and the monkeys were mentioned briefly again for some point, but we have to. Like and I think he was Richard was kind of saying like he was the one who brought that information to the guards, like, you know, and that
rather than
them uncovering it.
Yeah.
And it was at this point then he was told, like, he says, you know, they're doing this search and they're going to dig it up. They're going to go into the walls.
Yeah.
And they're telling them, like, this is going to be an invasive, a full intrusive invasive search as they're putting. And he was shown the photos of the scene as a live scenario. So they're on the screen to the side of him. He's sitting in the chair, his arms are crossed. He's in his blue t-shirt and grey pants, and he's looking over to the left. And he's asked, and right, he says, he's shown one picture, and it's under the stairs in the sitting room. And he's asked, what do you keep in there? Bits and pieces, he says. And then he's shown, it looks like cement. It's under the stairs. And he's asked, what's this? No, I don't know.
Yeah.
He's asked, what's behind? What's behind? It looks like part of the wall with a bit of a pipe. And he's asked, you know, what's behind that? And sorry, that's to what he replies, no, I don't know. And then there's another picture of the house, and he says he just said that was the door that was part of an extension. And then at that point, they've hit full time, and he's released at 6:39 on the 11th of October.
So they have obviously they've gone into this house and they're conducting this search under warrant, but they haven't at this point dug up the under the stairs. And that obviously all of these things have to be done super carefully, you'd imagine, for chain of evidence purposes and all of that. So it reaches the maximum time he can be held, which is 24 hours in this case, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so at that point then, the DP, the guards speak to the DPP or whatever, and they have to either charge or release him. So he gets released, but they're obviously, he gets released under specific conditions.
Yeah, well, they actually, there's no real conditions mentioned, but they do give him accommodation because they're being fair to him, I suppose. And they've organised a hotel room, and because they've seized his phone, they've given him a new phone so he can make his phone calls or do what he needs to do.
Yeah.
And you know, another cross-examination, the guard is on the stand. Dave Kelleher is saying, like, you know, was this done to keep him in contact? And he says no, but you know, but he kind of concedes, well, yes, it is a side effect.
Yeah,
they will be able to contact him if they need him.
Okay, but he's obviously not under no obligation. Then he's making the point in terms of answering phones or anything like that. So at that point he's released, and do we hear then? Does it go? The next bit of evidence, is that about him being rearrested or
no, because we still the garda search now is kind of going on, I suppose, at a parallel time. So there's two parts of the operation. Yeah. There's his arrest and interview, and then there's the garda search team who are doing this invasive search of number 3 Grattan Street. Yeah. Where he's lived with Tina since 1916, I think, or 2016. Yeah, they had moved there, and so I mean, initially it's a very, like, there's some kind of technical witnesses. The first one's a mapping expert who, you know, produces maps to show where in Ireland Youghal is and goes all the way down to the house and the actual dimensions of the rooms. And there's not much turns on that. Some of the exact measurements are going to be in the ambit of the forensic archaeologist. The mapper didn't actually do it because I think this is, you know, after, you know, certain discoveries are made, and kind of one of the first people into the house is a detective Garda Mairead Crowley, and she's a photographer with the Garda Technical Bureau, and she goes through, she takes all the interior pictures again, shows it all. She attended again took pictures of the laneway to the side, which was searched. We hear about this. She goes again back on the 12th, and she mentions then she photographs under the stair where the human remains had been found, and then she takes pics at the mortuary at the direction of the state pathologist, and then she goes back to Grattan Street. And she also took a video from the first day, taken on the first day of the search, that is, on the 10th of October. And it shows kind of, it's basically, it's a point of view camera. So the camera goes in through the front door. The stairs are straight ahead, black and white, hall tiles on the floor. The main living room, there's a couch, a number of items, including a cement mixer, tools. There's you can see the bricks of the stairs, kind of the side of the stairs. There's the front living room, the gap into the kitchen, the French doors into the living room. Then in the kitchen, they go in the front living room. The TV was still on. You could see, the jury could see this.
And they played the video. They're
actually playing the video, and she's describing the Garda witness is describing what you're looking at. And now it's a small narrow house.
Yeah.
So it's a slowly done. It's a slowly done video clip. So it takes a little bit of time, even though it's not a big space. And, you see the camera moving up the stairs and back down, and it's the view back down from the top of the stairs. And so we actually see any of the rest of the house. Yeah. It's just this living space, the living room and the kitchen that you're looking at. And, there's a lot of household items covering all the various surfaces, and then she's brought through all the different photographs she's taken. So there's 3 albums of photographs, right, I think between 10 and 11 or 12 of photographs in each album, and these were all handed to the jury then as well.
Yeah, so this is probably before and after then, if there's any. So at what point then are they starting to go into this under the stairs area and actually excavate it?
So, like, if we're sticking with the photographer,
yeah.
So as you said, like, it's before and after, and so they go in. She's there when the excavation is going on.
Yeah,
and album 2 really is kind of as the search is progressing.
Yeah.
So there's pictures taking a view under the stairs, and then there's a view under the stairs after the liner has been removed, and you can see the cement work.
Yeah.
And then the next picture, then the layer of cement has been removed, and under the stairs there's some soil, and then that's removed.
Yeah.
And then there's a close-up of the same image. She's going through this, and she says you can see little bits of plastic. And then in photograph number 7, there's a little plastic label found in the soil in that cavity, and it's a best before date, 3rd of the 3rd, 2017. So that's I suppose just a little over 2 weeks from the date that the state are alleging Tina was murdered.
Yeah.
And this basically photograph number 8, the same hole with more digging can be seen. Number 9 is a close-up of this black plastic that they can see, and there's a tape measure is in another photograph, and it's showing kind of the distance between the cement and the bag. And there's other close-ups of this.
Yeah.
And then on the 12th of October, there's they can see the black plastic bag. There was number 4, and this is in album 3 now. A stone slab is visible.
Yeah.
And this was on top of the plastic bag and had been covered in soil, which had been covered with cement.
Yeah.
So now we're getting the excavation is now deeper.
Yeah.
And and then I think we get to about photograph number 8. And it's deeper again. You can see the black plastic bag in its entirety, and the photographer says it contained human remains. And the wall that was beside the stairs, like the brick wall that you could see in one of the early pictures, that's now gone.
Right.
So they can get at the grave site. And then the final picture that was given to the jury was taken on the 3rd of October, and that was the forensic archaeologist wanted an image of the grave site after it was dusted off and cleaned, so they get to see the final resting place of Tina Satchwell. So,
and when did we hear then about the cadaver dogs being brought in? That presumably was a separate Garda witness, was it?
So it was a dog handler from Northern Ireland, Alan Ward, and with the agreement of the defence, his witness statement was read out in court by Geraldine Small, who's the prosecuting counsel. And the judge is explaining this to the jury that, it's under Section 21 of the Criminal Justice Act, there's special arrangements to allow this to happen. And he explains that, he works for the Home Office, and he's also an instructor, and he's a victim recovery dog handler.
Right.
And he, in April 2022, he trained this dog, Fern, to find human remains and body parts. And then in Monday of October, what would be the 9th, the day before the search begins. He's in Cork, and he's briefed by the guards about the search at Grattan Street that's going to happen.
Did they say what type of dog Fern is, or is
No, they didn't say.
Yeah.
We don't get to know.
Right. Okay.
At this point.
Yeah.
I kind of knew you were going to ask that, and I did ask.
Okay.
And there's a mysterious third dog going to turn up now in a moment.
Well.
But so he explains, he's in this statement that's been read out. It goes through some of the kind of the technical side of entries by virtue of a warrant that he was there to look for remains of Tina Satchwell, and he entered the search area wearing a full forensic suit to assist in the removal of a dog and a parrot from the scene. He says he went back in then at 7:00 that night. So that's 2 hours after Richard Satchwell has been arrested. So he's in there with Fern. He starts at the top. He describes how the dog had fresh boots on and was wearing a clean harness and a clean line. And they worked from the top of the house down. He said there was no firm indications. And then as they searched near the stairs in the living space and on the ground floor, she became very active and indicated that she was working in a body odor, is how it was put.
Right.
And he brought her out to rest. And while he was there, they spotted another small dog in the house. Because initially, when he'd gone in, they were told that there was going to be 2 dogs and a parrot, and he was there to assist in removing them. He found the other dog, so that was removed. And he went back in then at 10:00 that night with Fern, and she showed huge interest at this red brick wall that's beside the stairs, but she was unable to finish an indication because there was a settee up against that. And so he left the scene. And then the following day, which is the Wednesday, he re-entered, and the search team had taken the settee away. And he was able to continue the search with the cadaver dog with Fern. And the dog was very active outside under the stairs, and she indicated the presence of human remains. And there was no other indications from the dog anywhere else, in the house. So again, so obviously the excavation team went to do their work, because we know this from the photographer who was talking about being in on the 11th and the 12th.
Yeah.
So the dog handler went back in on Thursday the 12th when there was a black plastic bag that was still sitting in the grave, and he said Fern went into a full freeze indication, and that was the end of the dog handlers.
Yeah.
That was the end of his involvement, and that was actually the last witness that we heard from. Yeah. Like today, and they're going to be back on Monday for more evidence.
So the dog really indicates, and that plays a key role in the extent to which they excavate under the stairs.
Yeah, and it's the dog located the position where they should at least start the search.
Yeah,
because at this point, from the evidence that we've heard from DI Toomey, was that the opinion was, or the conclusion was, she never left the house, that she was in the house somewhere.
Yeah. And
obviously, in the interview while he's in Cove, he's being told this. Yeah. He says they're going to go through the walls, they're going to dig up the house. So I think, and as it was put to him, this is a murder investigation, and they were, I suppose, giving him every opportunity to give any information that he may have that could assist in the investigation.
Yeah. So that's this week done, Eamon. Do we know what other garda witnesses are going to be called, or what's going to happen next?
Well, there's going to be, we're talking about there was over 100 witnesses. Yeah. And we've seen, like in for instance, in the way the dog handler's statement was read out, there's work going on between the prosecution and the defence.
Which is normal,
it's absolutely normal. Yeah.
For example, the classic example would be they took CCTV from a house and both sides agreed this is taken, and you don't need to.
Yeah, they don't have to
question them,
prove the whole chain of evidence of where the DVD went and where it was locked up for whatever amount of time, and so it is moving fast. The trial, so they're I suppose getting through the evidence. A lot of these interviews that we're seeing on TV, the jury are also being handed, a transcript of these interviews. So they're not furiously taking notes like the media corps who are there. All the photographs that we talked about are all given to the same ones are given. And the judge actually asked the photographer, he said, like, you took a lot more pictures than, just the, whatever it was, 36 pictures in the 3 albums. He says yes, and he confirmed with her that they had both been handed over. They'd been handed over both to the defence and the prosecution. She said yes, in June with discovery. So this is all, and this again was all said in front of the jury.
And is there big crowds coming in, and is there a lot of people there at the case?
There's a certain amount of people there. Yeah, there wouldn't be any free seats, so to speak. I'm up at the front and trying to make sure I hear as much as I can, because it's never easy trying to hear everything when you're in a court,
It really isn't.
And it's handy. It's good to be beside colleagues on either side, and you can say Did you hear that? And yes, I heard that.
Cog each other's homework, Eamon.
Well, there's a bit of that, yeah.
Oh. Okay, Eamon. Well, of course, we'll come back on Monday and throughout next week as the evidence goes ahead.
Thanks, Niall.
Thanks, Eamon.
I'm Nicola Tallant and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.